Okay, जी, we are starting off with cumulative frequency. You need to understand cumulative frequency is cumulative frequency is adding up frequency after each class width. So cumulative frequency is when you add up frequency after each class width. We'll be working on the examples, but for now, what you need to understand is what is tested in cumulative frequency question. Number one is you will be told to find out cumulative frequency, that is C dot F. You will be told to draw graph. You will be told to draw graph. Then you will be told to find mean through graph. Then you'll be told to find upper quartile, lower quartile, inter quartile from graph. You can even be asked to find out quartile. Quartile is basically the percentage of cumulative frequency. We'll be discussing more in detail. You can be tested through probability in this part. That means the last question can be relative to probability. Similarly, you will be even asked relative frequency. Now, relative frequency is also tested through probability. So, you'll be asked to find out the cumulative frequency. Number one, you'll be told to draw the graph. You'll be told to find out mean, upper quartile, lower quartile, interquartile, or quartile from the graph. You'll be told to find out the probability and the relative frequency could be tested through this. Now, to understand what cumulative frequency is, you need to go through the same concept of class width. For suppose x is greater than 0, less than equal to 5, x is greater than 5, less than equal to, let's say, 10, x is greater than 10, less than equal to 15, x is greater than 15 and less than equal to 20. First of all, you need to understand that it is not necessary you will always have equal class width. You might have unequal class widths as well. So in both the categories, this question can easily be tested. Let's say the frequency here is 10, 15, 20, and 10, 15. Let's say we have 25 here. So this is your frequency for each class width. Now to find out cumulative frequency, your first cumulative frequency will be, now what does cumulative frequency means? That I've already told you in the initial first part, that cumulative frequency is adding up frequency after each class width. Now in this class width, the frequency is 10. So that means your cumulative frequency will also be 10. Which means that it starts from 0. At 0, your cumulative frequency will be 0. But at 5, your cumulative frequency is the frequency itself, because that is the frequency at the end of this class width. Now, the next frequency for the class width is 15. But cumulative frequency will be 10 plus 15, which will be 25. Similarly, next frequency will be the frequency that is in the third class width will be added to the sum of frequency of the two previous class widths. That means 25 plus 20 will become 45. Then this 25 in the last class width frequency will be added to the sum of the three of the class width frequencies, which is known as your cumulative frequency, which means 45 plus 25 will be 70. If the concept is still not clear, you need to understand this, that for 0, it will be 0. For 5, because this is the end of the class width, the frequency is 10, so the class cumulative frequency will also be 10. But in the next class width, your class width is ending at 10, but the frequency is what, 15. So obviously you will add this 15 to the previous cumulative frequency. So 15 plus 10 is 25. Similarly, the next frequency is 20. You will be adding this to the previous cumulative frequency. So 20 plus 25 will give you what, 45. And then 25 added to 45 will give you what, 70 at the end of this. So that means cumulative frequency is basically the sum of frequency after each class. That means the total frequency at that particular end of the class width value. For suppose this class width ends at 5, this class width ends at 10, this class width ends at 15, this class width ends at 20. So you need to remember that your cumulative frequency will be the sum of the frequency. Your cumulative frequency total here that will end will be basically the sum of the frequency. If you add 10, 15, 20, 25 all together, in the end you will have 70. But cumulative frequency is adding a frequency after each class width. 10 plus 15, 25, 25 plus 20, 45, 45 plus 25 is 70. Similarly, if I just rotate this thing down, let's say in the same concept, if I explain this, let's just remove this 25 from here. Let's just remove this 25 from here. You will be told that this is K, or you will be given that your previous frequency that you have is 10. You can easily say this 10 is added back. This 10 is added back to 15. So K value will be 25. So that means if the question has entire data and one value is missing, you can always add the cumulative frequency to the next frequency to get what, cumulative frequency. But this case can be reversed as well. This case can be reversed if I just say that, let's just take this thing down as 25, right? And let's just erase now. Let's just erase this 20 from here and mark it as, let's mark this thing as P. Now, you need to understand the entire question is there with you, right? And the cumulative frequency are also there. You need to find out frequency through the cumulative frequency. How will you get this cumulative frequency when you do not have frequency? And how do you get this cumulative frequency? Is by adding up this frequency in this. So in short version, if I explain you, that means 25 plus P should be equal to 45. 25 plus P should be equal to what? 45. So if I want to know the value of P, what I'll be doing is P is equal to 45 minus 25. P is equal to 45 minus what? 25. So the sum is 20 here. The value here gets what? 20. To have the answer, that means this particular value will be written as what? 20. So P will be 20. So if you see, if I just reverse back the working, your working will be 25 plus 20, 25 plus 20, you will again get what? 45. So in such question, you might be given cumulative frequency, and in respect to that, you will be asked to find out the frequency. To find out frequency, you will have to do the reversal working, which we just did now. Now, understanding that cumulative frequency will help you out to draw the cumulative frequency graph. Now, how do we draw the graph? The normal grid will eventually be given to you in the question, but at the moment we are trying to make the grid which will not be the exact, but we'll make sure that we do the specific heading so that your concept is bit clear in this. So let's just say we're taking this as 0, right? So we have, if we just start from here, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So let's just mark ourselves down here. This is your 1 point. Let's mark this 1. So let's just mark ourselves as this starts from 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20. This goes up till 20. And the maximum frequency that we have is 70. So you can always, the grid can be given to you, or the grid you'll be asked to draw according to the question, or if the question is silent, then you can make your own grid. So this is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. So understanding the concept that when you had when you had 0, the cumulative frequency was 0. So that means this graph will start from 0 itself. So if it starts from 0, let's mark it down from 0. Considering that your class width ends at 5, your cumulative frequency at 5 will be the frequency, because there's no frequency before this. There's no cumulative frequency before this. So 5, on 5, you need to have 10. So on 5, we can mark what? 10. So let's just mark 10 here. Then you have your grid ends at what? 10. So at 10, your cumulative frequency is 25. So if it is 25, so 10, your 20 is marked here, your 25 will be in the middle. For next 15, your cumulative frequency is 45. So at 15, we mark it as 45. Then we have is 20, and on 20 we have what? 70. So at 20 we have 70. We'll mark it as 70 here. Right? So the cumulative frequency curve that we'll draw will be from the freehand with the pencil, and it will touch the points. It will go above, and then it will obviously make a curve like this. Now, with respect to this, on the x-axis, you will always have class width. On the y-axis, you will always have cumulative frequency when you will be told to draw the cumulative frequency curve. So now, this will be your cumulative frequency curve. So these are the two things that could be asked to the examiner initially. Number one is to find out the cumulative frequency. Number two, you'll be asked to find out, you'll ask to be draw the cumulative frequency curve. Now you need to understand that with the help of this cumulative frequency curve, your question will be related to mean. Now, what is mean? Mean is basically in cumulative frequency 50% of cumulative frequency. 50% of the cumulative frequency, or I'll just correct it down, 15% of the total cumulative frequency. 50% of the total cumulative frequency. But with the help of this, you'll be getting mean through the extended line. Extended line from cumulative frequency to class width of that particular question. Extended line from the class width to the from the cumulative frequency to the class width. Now let's just do the example here. Let's say that we need to calculate mean. For mean, your cumulative frequency sum that in this question was 70. So for 70, you need to find out what? You need to find out 50% of 70 to calculate mean. Your mean, cumulative frequency mean will be what? 35. This is not your mean. Your mean will be when you extend the line from 35, when you extend the line from 35, from in the mid of obviously 30 and 40, your line is extended, it will touch the cumulative frequency curve, and then you will drop down to the class width. Now, for suppose, let's take this as 12, but obviously in this question, you will be given grid, and according to the grid, you will be writing down the exact value where your graph is coming down to the class width of x-axis. Similarly, remember this, in this particular question, each graph will be represented through the curve itself when you are making and the correct cumulative frequency. So the examiner gives the privilege to the candidates that obviously if there is 0.1, 0.2 difference of the answer that is given in the marking scheme, that can be taken as correct answer for you guys as well. Like for suppose if I say that the answer in the marking scheme is 2, but you are getting 2.01 or 2.1. So as per the examiner, there will be given a range. If that range, if your answer lies in that particular range, your answer will be corrected. So your mean for the question will be, when we extended the line, we got what? 12. So 12 will become your mean. So that means for each of the answer of the percentage, answer of the quartile, because percentage is quartile here. So the answer of the quartile will be extended from the cumulative frequency line to the cumulative frequency curve. I'll just correct it down here. I'll just say it again. Your 50% of what? Your 50% of cumulative frequency is 35. This will be extended from the cumulative frequency line to the cumulative frequency curve and extended towards what? Class width. Class width. And whatever answer you will get here, that will be eventually your mean, not the 35 that you got. Normally, candidate do make this mistake, they write down this 35 as your mean. So, just going forward, with the help of the same method, we'll be making sure that you understand the concept of upper quartile and lower quartile as well. Now let's just erase this. We know that our mean is 15. Now, the other part says you need to calculate the upper quartile. Now, what is the upper quartile? Your upper quartile will be 75% of cumulative frequency. This is basically 3/4 of cumulative frequency as well. That means 3/4, 75%. If I write down in the ratio, that can be 3/4 as well. But 75% of the cumulative frequency. which means that if I want to calculate, my cumulative frequency was 70, 70 multiplied by 75%. So this is 52.5. Now this 52.5 is the upper quartile cumulative frequency. This is your upper quartile cumulative frequency. This is not your answer. So what we're going to do is, we'll make sure that 52.5, we'll make a line. Let's say 52.5 is here. We'll extend the line from the cumulative frequency line to the cumulative frequency graph, and then we'll make sure that we drop down to the class width. Now let's say this class width is 16. So this 16 will basically be the upper quartile answer. That means your 52.5 was 70 was your cumulative frequency, the total of the cumulative frequency into 75%. Each time when you take out upper quartile, your upper quartile percentage is 75%. Then you got what? 52.5. This 52.5 is the cumulative frequency. We'll draw the line from here to the cumulative frequency curve. We drop down to what? Your x-axis, which represents the class width, and your class width answer is what? 16. So that means your upper quartile will be 16 for this particular question when we drop down the particular line. So upper quartile stays what? 16. So let's just write down 16 as your upper quartile. So the answer of this is 16, which is upper quartile. Similarly, when you have this graph and when you know that you have lower quartile as well, and you need to understand your lower quartile is basically 25%. Now, you need to understand that your lower quartile is 25% of cumulative frequency. Is what? 25% of cumulative frequency. And the cumulative frequency total we had was 70. So into what? 25%. Into what? 25%. The answer will be 17.5. The answer will be 17.5. But this 17.5 is the cumulative frequency. This 17.5 will be the cumulative frequency. This will help us to find the answer considering 17.5. Let's say 17.5 is here. We make a line till the cumulative frequency curve. We drop down. Let's say the answer that we got is 7. So that means this 7 is basically your lower quartile. The 77 is your lower quartile. How did you get it? We apply 25% to the cumulative frequency total. We got 17.5. We make sure that 17.5 is here. We extended the line to the cumulative frequency. We drop down. The answer of this is the lower quartile. So that means the answer of the lower quartile in this graph is basically your, in this graph is basically 7. Now, moving ahead, let's say it was 7. So let's just write it down here. 7 is your lower quartile. 7 becomes your lower quartile. Now, in this case, you need to understand. Now your upper quartile is here. Let's just write down. Your mean answer was 12, right? Your upper quartile was 16. Your lower quartile is 7. The question states, find out interquartile range. Now, what is interquartile? You need to understand. Answer of upper quartile minus answer of lower quartile. Answer of upper quartile minus answer of lower quartile, which means the answer of the upper quartile was 16. The answer of the lower quartile was 7. So 16 minus 7 we have is 9. So 9 becomes your interquartile range. 9 becomes the interquartile range. So what does this thing elaborates? This thing elaborates such thing that the curve represents the higher side values. That means 75%. This represents more than 75% of data. This represents lower than 25% of the data. Whereas this particular in the middle of upper quartile and the lower quartile is basically the mid of data, that is 50%. Remember, this 50% is not the mean. This 50% interquartile range is the mid of the data of the entire data that you have. But if I talk about the mean of the data, your mean will be what? 12, because it is the 50% of cumulative frequency. So there's a difference between the concept of the interquartile and there's a difference between the concept of mean. Mean is 50% of what? Cumulative frequency. Mean is the 50% of what? Cumulative frequency. Whereas interquartile range is 50% of the data. That is the data in the mid. The data that is there. That means most of the average people will lie in that particular data that is represented through the interquartile range. So now you need to understand the quartile. The quartile is basically the percentage. Let's say that the quartile, if the examiner tells you 20th quartile, this means 20% of cumulative frequency. This means the 20% of what? Cumulative frequency. So if we just take out 20% of cumulative frequency, your cumulative frequency is 70 into what? 20%. So we will end up with what? 14. Now 14 is your cumulative frequency. This is not your answer. 14 is your cumulative frequency. This is not your answer. We'll go back to the graph. We'll find out 14. Your 14 will somewhere lie here, right? Let's say this is your 14. You'll obviously drag down the line towards the class width. And let's say your answer is what? 6. So this 6 will be your 20th quartile. The answer of the 20th quartile will be 6, not 14. 14 will be the cumulative frequency, which will help you to find out the 20th quartile answer. So if the question says 70th quartile, so that means 70% of cumulative frequency total. If the answer says 25, if the answer says 35th quartile, so 35%, 35% of cumulative frequency. Your cumulative frequency value will be dragged down to the class width to have the value of what? Value from the graph for the quartile. The next thing in this was probability and relative frequency. Probability and relative frequency will make sure that we do the example question and we cover up the probability and relative frequency through the example questions of statistics. To go through the probability, you need to go through the lecture of probability that is there. The link is there. For relative frequency, obviously you'll be going with the concept of probability as well. Both of the things are related to probability. Okay, Ji, let's just start off with the example question that we have here. The example question states that a group of 80 students took a physics test. This table shows the distribution of their marks. Now, you need to understand that we already know this, that from 0 to 10, this is your class width. The other class width is from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60. So if you just look for the data, the class width has equal difference. So this is known as your equal class width. If the histogram was told to make on this, we would make a histogram on basis of frequency, because the class width are equal. But considering this, the initial point is 0, right? So at 0, your cumulative frequency will be 0 as well. But your class width is ending at 10. If you see, complete the cumulative frequency table. At 10, your cumulative frequency will be the frequency itself. So at 10, you will be writing down 4. Then, if you see, at 20, your cumulative frequency will be added to the frequency of the next class width, right? So 10 to 20, for 20, it should be 4 plus 12. Cumulative frequency is the adding of frequency after each class width. So for this, the answer would be 16. Considering this again, let's just work on the concept. If you see that in the first class width, we had frequency of what? 4. This 4 frequency is the initial frequency, which is ending at what? 10. So this 4 will be the cumulative frequency for the first value, that is 10, at the ending of 10. Because at 0, the cumulative frequency will be 0 as well. Similarly, at 20, this should be 4 plus 12, which is what? 16. In the next, what you need to understand is, for 30, your 16 plus 14. 16 cumulative frequency adding up to frequency. So 16 plus 14 will be 30. 16 plus 14 will be 30, right? Then cumulative frequency adding up to the next class width, 30 plus 22. So 30 plus 22 is 52. Then again, 52 plus 18. 52 plus 18 will be 70. So we'll write this thing down as what? 70. Then what do we have? Your 70 will be added to 10. So this 70 will be added to 10 and you'll have what? 80. Now if you see, the total of the cumulative frequency in the end, the sum of the cumulative frequency will be the total of frequency itself. You had 80 students, and if you see, this 80 student is basically this 80 itself here, because the sum of the total frequency will be equal to the cumulative frequency and value. Then we have is draw the cumulative frequency curve for this information. If you just look at this, the examiner itself has given you the x-axis value. All the x-axis values are there that are representing the class width, and the examiner itself has drawn the cumulative frequency grid as well. That means the labeled with the numbers. So what we see is at 0, it was 0, right? We initially started that 0. On 0, you will have the value of what? 0. But if you see the cumulative frequency, now, if you see the cumulative frequency at 10, you need to have what? 4. So at 10, we will be marking 4. Let's just, if you see, we have how many boxes there? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 10 divided by 5, that means each box is representing what? 2. So if each box is representing 2, so that means 2, 4. This point will be representing 4. For this, at 10, we will be marking down At 10, we'll make sure that we mark down 4. So this point will be marked. Then if you see, looking at the question itself, the other value that we have is on 20, we need to mark what? 16. On 20, we need to make sure that we have 16. So if we just look at this, at 20, we need to have 16. So this is your 20, and each box is representing what? 2. So this would be 12, 14, 16. We mark 16 this side. So 20 and 16 will be marked here. So if we just mark it, we'll mark it on this point. So at 20, we are marking down what? 16. The next is on 30, we have what? 30. On 30, we can write down 30, right? So 30, this is your 30 on the x-axis, this is 30 on the cumulative frequency. So 30, 30, we mark down as a point. That will represent what? 30. Then what we have is, we have 40. For 40, we need to mark what? 52. For 40, we need to mark 52. So if I need to mark 52, so this 52 will be on, this is your 40, and 52 is this line, right? So we'll be making sure that we mark it here at this point, because at 40, we need to mark 50 to 50. The next box will have 52, because each box is representing 2. So at 40, we need to mark what? 52. So we mark it right down here. Right? So this value will be your 52. Then what value do we have? We have at 50, we need to mark what? 70. At 50, we need to mark 70. So this is 50 and this point is 70. So we mark down 70. At 60, we'll mark down what? 80. So if I just draw the graph, your graph will be a freehand graph. It will be a curve joining down the points that are there. So this is your cumulative frequency curve that you have plotted and drawn. So draw the cumulative frequency curve for this information. This was part B for this particular question. Now, the pass mark for this test is 45. The passing mark for this test is what? 45. Use the cumulative frequency curve to estimate the number of students who passed. So 45. This is your 45 here. This is your mark. This will represent 45. So how many students passed? So if I just draw down the line towards the curve, your cumulative frequency is representing what? Your cumulative frequency is representing number of students. So that means you're passing, how many students are there who scored less than 45 or 62? How many students that scored less than? Because if you just draw the line, let's just draw the line so that the concept is a bit more clear. Let's just draw from 45. Let's just extend the line. If you see, I extended the line and I extended the line here. So if you see towards right, this anybody who has scored 45 and above, this will be your passing criteria, right? So people scoring more than 62 will get what? Passed. People scoring more than 62 will, people scoring more than 45 will pass. And how many students lie under this? That means you had 80 students, 62 students scored less than 45. If we mark left, we'll mark down here. So 62 students scored less than 45. So what do we need to have? We need to make sure that how many students actually passed. So we'll make sure out of total, we subtract 62. That means 18 students were there who passed the examination with 45 marks and above. How many students were there? 18 students were there who actually passed the examination with 45 marks and above. 62 students were representing all the, this particular part is basically representing all the students who have scored less than 45. And this particular point, this particular part is represented by the student who has scored more than 45. So how many students are there? We'll be obviously subtracting 62 from 80. We'll make sure we get what? 18 students were there who scored more than 45 marks.